Used to be that I ruled the world. Used to be that I was invincible. Used to be that I was a man. Used to be that I was a man.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Songs Nobody Asked Me For. My name's Nigel, and I am the singer and songwriter of the Plymouth UK-based indie funk band The Curve. And yeah, you're very welcome. Now, this is a funny podcast because I've actually done this. This is the third time I've tried to do this. Not today. I kind of did them yesterday twice, and each time the sound didn't come out, and I couldn't really work out why, because I hadn't done anything different from what I would normally do. So I'm a little bit confused about that, and it's always a bit worrying then. So I've double checked. I've checked twice, recording, unplugging, because if that happens when I interview somebody, I'll be well pissed off. It's bad enough that I've had to sort of think, what was I talking about? But I don't really know. I guess it's technological issues happen sometimes, and maybe I need to do an episode on technological issues. I can certainly think of lots of those where technology has let me down or hasn't been working properly and caused me a problem, I suppose. But it's not what I wanted to talk about today. In my head today was, I don't know, it's the idea of pressure. I don't really know where pressure is saying, really. I think I was thinking about something the other day. This is a sort of little tangential thing, really. I don't know why, but it came to mind to think about my experience of sport when I was at school. And from that came some consideration of my music experience at school and growing up, and what might have influenced me in a positive or negative way, really, into becoming or having a belief in myself of being a songwriter and being a musician, really. Now, sport was, I'm going back now to the, when was I? Sort of late 70s, early 80s. That's how old I am. Remembering that when I started secondary school, the culture shock of it was huge. I went to this nice little junior school in Harrowwood in Essex, and then I went to this school called St Edward's. It was a Church of England comprehensive school, but you had to prove that you were going to church and all this stuff to sort of go along. And I was in a Methodist family, which seemed to be a good thing to them, because I guess if you were going to pretend you were going to church, generally speaking, you would say you were Church of England, whereas if you were adamantly saying you were Methodist, it was kind of saying that you did actually go to church. So we did. I got into this school, and it was a good school. It was known as a good school, selection school, but it was a comprehensive. It had been a public school, I think, before that. It was quite a posh school, and then it became a comprehensive. And the headmaster that was still there at that time had been the headmaster of it when it had been a public school, and he wore all these gowns, had a cane. There was corporal punishment there, and the most randomly bad corporal punishment. I particularly remember the RE teacher, one of the RE teachers, lovely guy, but if you were talking, told you off, he'd make you stand up, this bloody great big Bible, and whack you over the top of the head with it. Now, I kind of think the potential for brain damage and all sorts of difficult things, and it just, you can't imagine it today, can you? But it was seen as a thing. He'd sit down again. Another one, maths teacher would throw the chalkboard. They had blackboard rubbers, these big wooden things, and throw it across the room at people if they weren't paying attention. Teachers that would smack you on the bum, some of whom it felt a little bit dubious about their enjoyment of that, let's say. And then we had the PE teachers, and the PE teachers loved nothing more, it seemed to me, than to slipper you, really, which was to take a plimsoll or a trainer, smack you across the bum as hard as they possibly could, really terrorising me as a kid. Now, the point of this was that when I first started there was a couple of weeks where they got people to sign up for the football team and the rugby team. And then from that, they split us into two groups within our year, or in our class, rather. And they had what they called the abilities group, which is all the people who were in the football team and the rugby team. You can see where this is going. The other group, the group I found myself in, was called the non-abilities group. Now, if ever there's going to be a label that's going to make you think, I'm pretty shit at sport, it's going to be to be put in a group called the non-abilities group. And I pause for a minute because I'm just really aware that I'm going to cough my guts up now. There, I'm back. I was going to edit that out. I imagine I'd edit that out. You don't want to hear me coughing my guts up. This is partly because it's early in the morning, and earlier this morning I was singing, doing a lot of singing, and often when you sing early in the morning, it sort of clogs up your lungs or declogs your lungs, depending which way you look at it, really. So I'm in this non-abilities group, and I think there's a continuum, of course, aren't there? There's some very sporty people who love sport. There are people who hate sport, or aren't really good at sport, don't want to do sport, have physical health problems, mental health issues that mean they don't want to do sport. And I would have been in that middle place. And that middle place becomes this. If you encourage me, if you find out what I'm good at, try to work out stuff, you could have moved me into this space where I'd have loved sport and done sport. Or you can say to me, I don't give a shit about you. You're not in the teams. You're clearly not any good. I don't want to know. I'm not going to try and encourage you, which is the attitude of the PE teachers at my school. You know, it was a great school. I loved that school. I had a really good time there. It was a very stable period of my life. And most of the things I loved. And I've talked about Ian Clayton, my music teacher, and how supportive he was of getting our original band up in the first place, taking us out, buying us equipment, finding us the space to practice. Actually, at one point, trying to push us to let him play bass in our band, which we should have done. I don't know why we didn't, because we didn't have a bass player, and I think I was just too intimidated by the idea of it, really. But, you know, it was a good space. And but the PE wasn't. Now, the PE teachers took it in turns each year to have the abilities and the non-abilities. And the teacher we had, I'm not going to mention his name, although I wish I could. I would, because I'm virulently resentful of this guy and how he treated us in sport. They didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do that group. He hated doing it. So he came along. He was always in a bad mood and always made us do sports skills as opposed to the sport itself. So we would do basketball skills and practice this particular thing all session, to a point where I hated basketball. Oh, I still do, actually. I don't really enjoy basketball. Whereas so many people love it, and I wish I could, but I can't. Because, you know, he made that a very difficult experience for me. Same with rugby. We never got to play football in those first few years. We would play rugby. It was a rugby school. I hated rugby, terrified me, but we had to do it. And we didn't play a game of rugby. We did rugby skills. And then in the summer, you'd do athletics. And we'd play one game of cricket over maybe 2 PE sessions. That was it. One game of softball, which we enjoyed as well, but the rest of it was athletics. Cross-country running as well. They love making us cross-country run. Cross-country run in any weather. I've been at cross-country running in the snow and the ice. We used to have some scrublands near the school, and we used to go there. You know, you'd have to go around afterwards treating wounds. So because we have to go through a flipping river that at that time was kind of up to your waist. And one of them would stand there to make sure you were okay, but it's absolutely fucking freezing. And your trainers and your shorts would get soaked, and you get soaked, and after that you have to go in this big communal shower, and they're whipping you with wet towels to get you through quickly. Oh, you can feel my pressure about this, you know. It was a horrible experience. And then they go around and treat these little wounds, any scratches you got with an antiseptic cream, because, you know, they could get infected, and also mad, absolutely mad. But from that, I got left in a place where I thought I was no good at sport. And I had played a little bit of tennis. And actually, when I was at home, I'd been in my Haroldwood Cricket Club, which is a big cricket club. It's not a small cricket club, and was encouraged, you know, sort of did a little bit there, but wasn't very confident. Never got to be in the school cricket team. Never got to have any opportunities. I discovered years later that one or two of the lads in the upper group there had tennis lessons and stuff. I'd love to do that. So when I moved into an older age, I had a period of time of discovering sport, realising I was kind of okay at it. I used to run a lot. I still cycle, and feeling a real resentment that my childhood experience of that was to tell me how crap I was. You know. Now, it didn't drive me into any place of wanting to succeed. In fact, what it did instead was made me feel that I was useless at something, you know. And I wonder how many young people get that experience in music and in creativity. I think it was Holly Ebony that I interviewed a little while ago, who talked about that idea that every child is creative and musical and has that ability when they're very young. But that some of them lose that, and some of that isn't encouraged, you know. But I don't think it's as, I think I agree with her that I think every one of us has it. I don't necessarily agree it's as straightforward as some are encouraged and some aren't. Because I wasn't really encouraged in that creativity. I've talked before about how one of the things my mum did was to really be interested in music. She was interested in music. My dad was as well, but so they were supportive of music lessons. So my mum liked the idea that I was going to play the guitar, but I think she liked the idea I was going to play classical guitar. They liked the fact that my older brother learned the clarinet, but they liked it most when he was doing classical clarinet. You know, he went up to a very high level, grade 8. Then he played the saxophone. He was in jazz bands and played with my band briefly. But they liked all that more formal, the jazz, the sort of the operatic singing he went on to do. Whereas for me, I think they liked it when I played classical guitar, a bit of folk, and then when I moved into a more sort of rock focus, they weren't that interested. But they weren't really that supportive, other than my mum doing a particular thing. And I've talked about this very early on in this, where she said to me about the guitar that I could learn the guitar and that they would get me a guitar. They got me a guitar, but the condition was that I had to practice 20 minutes a day, every day. And first of all, you go, oh, yeah, of course I will. Yeah, I want the guitar, you know. But very quickly you get into that place, I don't want to do this. But she made me do it. And the thing with it was, she always gave me that choice. And I think this is key to it, for me, as a young person, that I could give it up. Anytime I wanted, I could give it up. But if I wanted to do it, I'd need to practice. Now, I've talked before about my youngest son being a goalkeeper at football. He's very good. And one of the things I did with him, because I was really uncertain, I watched lots of parents kind of forcing their children to keep going in these things, shouting at them, bawling them out. Some parents being indifferent, saying, you know, and I wasn't really sure where to go with it, because I could see he had a talent. I could see he had great hand-eye coordination. I was given that support very early on in a tiny little group he used to go to in Plymouth, a football thing. It wasn't a team, it was just like a forum, and it was run by a guy called Dave Smith. And Dave Smith had been he'd been manager of Arsenal, I think, for a short period of time. But he was manager of Argyle. He was a really old guy, really lovely old guy. And he just would try and encourage these kids to enjoy what they're doing. And my son kept saying, I want to be a goalkeeper, I want to be a goalkeeper. And he'd listen, oh, okay, you can go in goal. And then one day we turned up and he had got the Plymouth Argyle women's goalkeeper to come to the session, just to be with my son. I'll never forget it, and I appreciate it so much. And she spent that whole hour and a half with my son, checking him out, doing this stuff. And then I came over to me and she said, he's got really good hand-eye coordination, he needs this, he needs smaller gloves, it was amazing, really useful to me as a parent. And from that time, I thought, he's got a skill, how do I encourage this? And I did a similar thing to my mum, in which I found him one-to-one lessons with a great ex-Argyle keeper again called John Sheffield, lovely guy, call out to John. I hope he's well. And he used to sort of really beast my youngest son, and it was funny and okay, but in a really positive way. But I always said to him, you know, you can do this, you can give it up anytime you want. But if you do it, I want you to be safe, and I want you to encourage you to be the best you can. So you need to have these one-to-one sessions, because John will teach you about safety and about sort of the technique and everything. And he grudgingly agreed to that, and he hated going to John at times. I related to that with some of the guitar lessons I had when I was younger. But always I said, look, you don't have to do this. You could quit. You could stop doing it. No, I want to do it. And every now and then we'd have that conversation as he went through the Plymouth Argyle setup. He went through Exeter City for a while. Whenever it was a struggle, we'd always have that conversation. But the rest of the time, I'm encouraging him. Say, oh, you're doing really well. You're doing good. But I didn't want to push him. So I think that worked for him. I think you'd have to ask him. But he's still playing football, still enjoying his keeping. You know, as an adult now, and yeah, I kind of think it was, that part of my childhood was useful to me. I can see that, but I didn't really get any creative, emotional encouragement. I didn't get any. It wasn't something I could play something in front of my parents and they go, "Oh, that's amazing." I didn't do that. It was a very secretive, in maroon thing, and the teacher encouraged me, but I don't know who else encouraged me, and I think that. The one person who did actually was Pav, who I played with in London for a couple of years, well, a number of years, and you'll have seen him on the podcast if you follow the podcast. And I guess Pav was my encouragement because he was my mate. We were both at school together. I used to go over to his place, he used to come over to mine. I'd bring my guitar over and we'd practice. And we used to, I don't remember particularly practicing other people's songs, though he has a memory that we did. And at some point, we started bringing songs to each other. It was clear that we were both writing songs, bringing them along. And I got that encouragement as a younger person before I went off to university. At university, he did his own thing. At university, I was definitely writing, you know. And then when I came back, I've told this story before, going over to Pabs with a couple of new songs, him picking up the bass then rather than the guitar, and off we went, really, into Brilliant Button, the band that we had there. But I don't know what else in terms of encouragement I have. So there must be something about nature that sits within this, because I've also met musicians who just, it drives them that they have to struggle. It drives them that they don't get any encouragement. And yet others would talk about the encouragement and the support they had for their music that made them into the musician they are. And it makes me think that all of these, at some level, are false ideas. No, not completely. It could well be that if I was a certain type of person, I was given lots of encouragement, I might become lazy about something. Whereas if I was a different type of person, that might really work for me. And similarly, if I come from a background where nobody supports me in this, I feel that I'm not supported in anything. That might drive me and strive me to want to succeed. Whereas another person, it might just deaden them and make them think, oh, what's the point, you know? It's interesting. I kind of, you know, that part of what I do in this, I tried to make sense of how I became a songwriter and what made me do that. And I think so far from meeting other musicians, I haven't come across a definitive answer. I kind of hoped I would in some way. I thought I would find a pattern, something that was similar, but I've just seen this range of people not really having other people around, generally having supportive environments of some sort or another. I think that's there, but not necessarily being encouraged into music, but not being discouraged. I haven't had somebody who's been told they're not supposed to do or can't do it. My younger brother was really into his sport and not music, and he felt that he was never giving the encouragement from my parents because sport wasn't something they valued in the same way. I'm not sure about that, but you know, I think some of that is true. They certainly did encourage the music, and he was encouraged to play music. And then when he dropped out of doing that, he felt that, you know, they were less supportive of him, and maybe they were. You know, it's hard to tell, isn't it? And of course, time is a wonderful thing and makes it hard to work these things out. And I don't know whether it's why I become more or less discouraged as an older adult then when things happen, when I get support, when people like what we do, or when nobody seems to like what we do, or I can't, you know, I'm in a sort of echo chamber of three people liking something all the time, that it's hard to tell. And I wonder whether some of that fragility or strength that you get from being supported or not supported when you're younger has an influence on what you do and your ballsiness and your confidence, really, when you do it. I'm looking forward to, I'm trying to pin down a couple of other musicians, and I'm really looking forward to the ongoing conversations about this, because I can think for some people, some musicians, I think they might think, what are you on about? It's just, we just do it, you know, and others would really empathise with that, and others are in a struggle with that, you know. I don't know. I find it interesting, but, you know, who knows? It's, yeah. Do I work better under pressure? That's the question. Or do I work worse under pressure? And I think, yeah, maybe I work differently. I've got to think about that, because it's one part of my life in a way that the only pressure I put on is what I put on. You know, it's not my work. The guys sometimes need something from me, or the band will create some pressure because people are upset or pissed off about something, or something needs more work on it or attention, and I'm not giving it the right attention, etc., etc. But I don't know. I don't know. Something for me to ponder. I'm sure I'll be back to talk about it again. Right. I need to get on with my day, really. Do subscribe or follow the podcast. I really appreciate that. And like it, comment. I had a couple of comments recently in my timeline, which was lovely. And yeah, keep encouraging me, because that always helps. And follow the band. Check out the band. Hashtag Music the Curve will bring you into some zone and sphere of being able to find us. And yeah, I will be back next week.
She said no.